Welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast, where power, politics, and the world's most coveted materials collide. Rare earth elements power the backbone of tomorrow's most critical technologies. With China dominating global production, the U.S. and its allies must align strategically to ensure a stable future. This urgency prompted tech entrepreneurs Daniel O'Connor and Dustin Olsen to launch Rare Earth Exchanges, a news and insight platform built to equip stakeholders and decision makers with the tools and intelligence needed to reduce dependency and build prosperous resilience. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, like always, welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. You've got me, Dustin, and my illustrious co-host, Daniel, who's actually looking pretty dapper. You got the plaid and the pink pinstripes.
Yeah,
Nice.
I learned
Nice.
I'm the best.
Perfect. Great. How's your week been?
It's good. It's great. It's getting hot in these parts, as you might know. Things are picking up. I mean, my goodness, we're getting really busy on our website. We announced the heavy rare earth rankings.
We did. Yes, we launched that.
Who's winning? Who's at the top? The rebels.
China. The rebels are at the top.
The rebels are at the top.
Yeah. So if you're curious about the heavy rare earths, who else is on the rank there? Head over to rareearthexchanges.com and check it out. A lot of effort and time and research went into creating that list and finding the different differentiators to create the ranking. We're pretty proud of it. So go check it out. So yeah, that was a big thing this week that we launched that.
It's a huge thing. We put a press release out. I don't think anyone has ever really done this publicly. So this is a first. We're being a little disruptive. There's probably some consultants that are going to get nervous soon.
Or upset. They're like, oh, what are those guys doing?
Exactly.
We did a lot of due diligence. So we're excited to hear and see what people think about it. Okay, so also last week, Daniel, we talked with Ian Murphy. We had him on the show. He is a Chinese subject matter expert. And we had a great conversation. Our business partner, John, was also on the call with us then. Any key takeaways or anything that stood out to you from that call last week with Ian?
Well, just that he specializes in looking at national security in the global context, particularly with China, looking at the rare earth and critical mineral supply chain and what it means to have this leverage on the Chinese side. So he's a very important intellectual that we want to collaborate with more. We invited him to come and contribute, content when he has the time. So highly recommend for people interested that they watch that interview and they check him out. He's put a paper together that we editorialized and I think he has a lot to contribute.
Yeah. Very fascinating, very intellectual, as you said, which was just a riveting conversation, honestly. And when we veered into like economic coercion tactics and the potential for future conflict, like it's really resonating with a lot of the current events that we're seeing. We're talking about tariffs and the agreement with China. It just felt very timely. And kind of put a lot of things into perspective for us as we think about not only China's position that they've been building over the last decades,
yes,
but even right now, right?
100%. It's refreshing too because he understands and appreciates what we're trying to do by calling this out and by talking about longer term comprehensive solutions like industrial policy and the right investment. And his work supports what we're learning and what we're trying to communicate out through our website and the YouTube and the forum.
Yeah. Yes. It's very, very helpful, his insights. So, I don't know about you. I'm very much looking forward to some of his upcoming work that we'll probably showcase here on Rare Earth Exchanges.
For sure.
But speaking of China and timeliness and tariffs, do you have any interesting updates with the Trump agreement over in China?
Yes. So I think this is important because we had this trade war liberation day, the tit and tat with China. They cut the exports to the rare earths. We started to see problems in the automobile production. At least one plant, Ford, reported a slowdown or maybe even a stoppage. Other countries had issues. You didn't read a lot about the defense sector because it's a national security issue, so they won't talk about it to the media. But it's a real concern. So our president was very motivated to get his trade team back to London to meet with the Chinese team. Now, they did agree on a framework to keep talking and to release rare earths in the short run. It's not a deal, though. Going around saying it's a deal and we're good and we're going to get our rare earths, but the problem is it's just temporary. So I'm going to explain to everybody why it's not really a deal. Okay. So first of all, it's a temporary framework. It's not a binding agreement. It's a 6-month tactical pause. It's not legally enforceable. It's not a trade treaty. There's no enforcement mechanisms. Number two, Beijing retains all the leverage, full leverage. They have all 80 to 90% of the rare earths processing and magnets control. 95% plus, probably 99% plus of heavy rare earth metals, which are used in some military applications. Importantly, they're making it difficult. They have more data collection requirements now. They could track more granularly the exports coming out of China, and they can stop it if it's dual use, if it has military use. They're extracting market intelligence, importantly, from buyers. So whoever is the intermediary buying the rare earth product, whether it's oxides or if it's finished goods, magnets, they're having to basically give a lot of information about who their customers are, value chain, essentially, according to some people, under conditions of, being anonymous. We can't share who tells us this stuff, but they're telling us it basically amounts to industrial espionage, or at least facilitating that, because they're extracting market intelligence. The Chinese are, through these companies. And again, these rare earths are geoeconomic weapon, and that's what they're doing. So this, also the U.S. remains continuously dependent on China and these providers. Okay, commercial scale separation, for example, refining for heavy rare earth elements like dysprosium and terbium, permanent magnet manufacturing capacity, end-to-end recycling infrastructure. All of this is stuck over there. So that hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. The risk of strategic retaliation persists. So China's Ministry of Commerce can reimpose restrictions or slow license approvals at any time. If U.S. tariffs escalate or if tech restrictions intensify, Beijing can halt exports of refined rare earth oxides or metals, tighten licensing rules via vague national security definitions, favor domestic allied markets, so they're Belt and Road Initiative partners, for example. There's no resolution on military supply chains that we know of. Maybe there's some black ops CIA operation out there that's over there with the rebels in Myanmar, for all we know. But this framework that's in place that our president's calling a deal, it doesn't guarantee access to military critical rare earth elements like samarium or heavy rare earths used in jet engines, missiles, or sonar systems. These inputs remain strategically sensitive, and the Pentagon lacks secure non-Chinese sources. So, for our defense, it's not an issue. How do I summarize this up, Dustin? It's a temporary truth. It's not a strategic reset whatsoever. Frankly, the deal is more PR than a supply chain fix. It's PR. It's Trump being able to promote and tout, I got a deal, we're good, I'm good. I hate, and I don't want to make Donald upset. We know how upset he can get, but it's not. It's temporary. We need massive investment in U.S. allied mining, refining, and magnet production. We need an industrial policy. We have been saying that, okay? You can't keep kicking this can down the road. All right. And
but it sounds like he's going to keep kicking it, though.
well, we're going to keep calling it out. That's one thing that we can do here. We're not, consultants. How can I say, uncle getting milk from Uncle Sugar? We can say what we want to say. There is a problem. Maybe the president's doing something behind to give him credit. Maybe he's doing something we don't know about. And so we need to be fair that he could have a strategy that he's not talking about. So, let's give him the benefit of the doubt there. But saying the deal is done it's not.
Yeah. So I'll agree with you. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I feel like that's been his mode of operation since he got into office, of just doing things without really any explanation. So hopefully there's more to the rest of the story. It's interesting that, like, I think, like you said, it's a PR move, and it's probably to, in a way, cool the jets of those who are hot bothered by what's going on. Those
Could,
sort of,
could,
you know,
yeah,
it's affecting everything, right? So I think if people are at ease, things can resume. The investment markets can go back up, people can go back to work, like whatever. I almost wonder if that's the PR move here, is all's good, carry on. When, as you've described here, that's really not true. Like, we'll carry on, but probably not in the best way we could.
yes. I mean, we don't know. Maybe things will get better, but we know as long as there's tension between China and the U.S., this is a big problem. Both rare earth element and critical mineral supply chain is profoundly controlled by China. And we're barely scratching the surface of what we need to do to be free of that and to have democratic market societies be able to pave their own path forward and not be dependent on a society that could be adversarial very quickly.
Very quickly and very easily. Yeah, those two things hand in hand are not a great combo.
No, no. So that's one thing that we wanted to update everybody on this week. There's more work to do on the trade deals and the rare earth element supply chain. The big beautiful bill is the next thing that we should talk about, because I'm not sure if it was passed yet, but I think it's probably going to get passed.
Yeah, I don't think it's been passed. The headlines I saw, that I think it's moved on to the House. They're reviewing it right now. I think it was
Yeah.
the last that I saw. So we're not quite there yet. The parties that be are still evaluating.
Yes. So if we look at that, again, you would think that, because there's a huge amount of spend in that bill, okay? And depending upon who you speak with about it, there will still be debt that accumulates $2, $3, $4 trillion. So you would think, at least given what we know to be the problem, that you would infuse into that thing some kind of industrial policy components so that you have investment, so that you can transcend this current situation. Well, we looked at it, and it's an article in Rare Earth Exchanges, June 29th. And, the big, beautiful bill does, Dustin, seek to boost U.S. critical mineral production through funding, permitting, reforms, and strategic investments. The legislation that we reviewed, it reveals a complex tension between supporting mining, extraction, and maintaining demand in clean energy industries. Why? Because remember, the clean energy industries that many drive a lot of demand for rare earth elements, guess what? They're cutting those. We're going back to coal and oil, right? And it's a very contrarian move compared to much of the world, right? So the big, beautiful bill does provide incentive. I'll just share a few things in this package. It does recognize the importance of critical minerals. There's $2.5 billion specifically to boost U.S. critical mineral production through National Defense Stockpile, okay? The government could use this funding to purchase and stockpile domestically produced rare earths, effectively guaranteeing a buyer for U.S. mines. It also provides $500 million to expand a Department of Defense loan program that could be used for some of these projects. All right, now I want you to think about it. I just said $2.5 billion for a basic stockpile, and $500 million for some purchases. Do you remember what that gentleman that did that study in Thailand said we would need for resilience? How much was that number?
It was a range of $100 to $200 billion.
That's correct. So we've seen that number multiple times, but even something, it's in the tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. So what is the big beautiful bill? While we continue to accumulate debt, we are spending, frankly, a sprinkling, not much, a pittance for what we actually need for resilience. And then the other problem is that it's cutting a lot of the green energy stuff. Donald and a lot of the folks in Washington now that are running Washington, they're not very keen on green energy, solar, wind, electric vehicles. They're going a contrarian route. And maybe, who knows, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. But I do know that sort of hurts the market, because remember, rare earths, it's a supply chain problem. It's not just mining. You need the whole ecosystem. And remember what the Chinese do. They flood the market. When things start getting going here, they flood the market with cheap product. You're wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't have enough in this bill to go anywhere. That's it'll spur some activity. It's better than nothing, I will say. But
Again, the theme has been it's not enough. It has the makings of being what we need, but it's not enough.
it's not enough. So we'll have to keep evangelizing through this channel for what really is needed, because again, it's entire ecosystem, upstream, midstream, downstream, the recycling. There is movement, but what we have been told as well by very smart people that are in this business, that the investment is still hard to come by. There's a lot of skittishness. They're concerned. Private capital is often concerned about, well, where's the market for this? What if the Chinese flood the market? It's hard to price these things because there is no market. Remember, there's no exchange out there for rare earths. There's only 2 exchanges in China, and that's not a transparent market. There is no market. There's China that has 90% plus. We get our product out of there for the most part. And we have this scrambling of different companies, upstream, midstream, downstream, trying to set up operations over here. We have some good companies like MP Materials that is a legitimate player that is, going to start making magnets. They have a partner with General Motors. I mean, I think companies like MP Materials, they could be very valuable because they've at least partially figured it out. But they're going to need help from the government. And they're not there yet, Dustin. They don't understand how severe the problem is. They still think, it's just a standard market problem. We'll figure it out. And it's just not that. It's like COVID. What did you do to get those vaccines? And say what you want about those vaccines. They got them done within several months. They spent tens of billions of dollars and they got product out. It's like World War II. They had to spend enormous amounts of money in a focused area. Right? So ironically, President Trump has a legitimate emergency with this problem. All these emergency actions, he's done executive orders based on this emergency, that emergency. If he focused on this, it's a legitimate emergency.
Yeah, it really is. And we'll give him credit for that, right?
Yes.
He's enacted, national emergencies for X, Y, and Z. He's struck a deal with China, in air quotes. Like, he's doing stuff. But as we said before, it's good in theory, but he just doesn't have the runway long enough to maybe do all that needs to be done.
Well,
and that's probably against him.
It's that, plus he's trying to do so much that sometimes focus is important. So you can't. There's an old saying: he or she who is everywhere is nowhere. So focus is, if you want to have enduring impact, you have to focus. But I do think he has his agenda and his program, and he knows things that we don't know. So, I reserve, I'm not going to be judgmental. We have to see what unfolds. But we know what we know and what we're learning. And, it's a free country to speak out about it.
Totally. What else was in the news this week that caught your eye?
Yeah, so there's lots of things. Every day we have a lot of news up there. But there's a new mine. They're saying it's the first one in 70 years that's going to be going live. It's the Brook Mine in Wyoming by Ramaco Resources. It's the first new rare earth mine in the U.S. in over 70 years. That's what they're saying. I mean, I think other than MP Materials, that could be true. We have to validate that, but it's definitely, up there as new. It utilizes a unique carbon ore approach to extract rare earth elements and critical minerals from coal deposits. Again, this is Wyoming. We are, by the way, speaking with some Wyoming elected officials, I believe, somewhat soon here on this channel. Governor Mark Gordon of Wyoming has emphasized the project's significance for energy independence. And again, the goal is to reclaim American critical mineral independence. So the company's Ramaco Resources, and again, it's the Brook Mine in Wyoming. So that's a good piece of news that's happening.
Yeah.
Another piece of news, we're international. We look all over the world. So a very large company in India, is getting pretty aggressive about industrial policy. They're not quite there yet, but I would say they're a little more advanced than we are in many ways. India's had historic challenges with China back and forth. India is the fourth biggest economy now. They have passed Japan.
which is wild.
And you know what? They're going to pass Germany very soon.
I believe that.
India will be number 3 within probably a year or two. And don't underestimate them. So Hindustan Zinc, it's a huge company. It's part of a much bigger conglomerate called Vedanta Limited. They have big rare earth mineral plans targeting neodymium with production expected to start around 2030. So it's 5 years out. They're planning 5 years out. And that's due to complex regulatory and technical challenges in India. It's not always straightforward doing business there. They currently import about 9,700 tons, at least according to media sources we've been looking at, and of rare earth elements, primarily from China. Again, so they have the same problem. Everybody has the same problem. They're all tied to China, right?
Yeah. I don't know how you can be when China controls 90%
Yes.
of the production.
Exactly. So there, again, it's an example of, the big planning that's happening in India. And we're going to be interviewing the CEO of another big Indian company soon, and they're doing recycling. There's other, in China, groups are looking to expand magnet production. So a company called Dongyang DMEGC launched about, I think it's about 100 million for expanding sintered neodymium, dymium iron boron magnet production by 5,000 tons annually. So China controls this magnet production. Almost every week we're reading about companies like this, these Chinese companies that are putting in 50, 25, 50, 75, 100, 200 million, okay, into the expansions. This group, they're owned by a company called Innovo, and they're a big company. They want to strengthen their position in permanent magnet supply chains, particularly in electric vehicles, wind energy, and electronic markets. And, of course, we're going to be doing our comparison of magnet producers, but again, 90% or so of these magnet producers are in China at this point. And remember, it's the magnets and other components and assemblies that you make from these materials that are used for electric vehicles, green energy, high-tech military products, electronics, you name it. The company Innovo, I think I'm pronouncing it right, is publicly traded. Again, they're part of what's called the Hangdian Group conglomerate. China has these huge conglomerates that are active in multiple industries. They were formed in 1997 through the restructuring of some other conglomerates, and they've got about 5,000. The Innovo has about 5,200 employees and generates about $550 million in revenue. So it's just it's a $550 million subsidiary of a huge conglomerate. I don't think they're state-owned. I'll have to double check on that, but I think they're private. They're publicly traded in China on the, not the Shanghai, I think in the Shenzhen or one of the other stock exchanges. So, we're watching all these companies. We're generating more and more intelligence. People are contacting us from China. We have networks over there. And, we're going to present all this. We're going to democratize all this information, Dustin, so that, the biggest defense companies, that's our gift to our society. Our defense contractors won't have to spend, enormous amounts of money on consultants to get this information. We're going to have it all with a nice subscription available.
There you go.
So
That's the plan, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the Innovo investing that kind of money, it really kind of just almost reinforces their dominance in this space, just the control that they have.
Exactly. And another one that we should look at is, we track a lot is the Chinese Communist Party with the state-owned companies in China. We're seeing almost like every couple of months that they have these meetings where the top brass executives of these companies have to basically show loyalty to the communists. So remember, these Chinese companies are not, especially the state-owned ones, are not companies in the way that we understand them to be. And that's
So when you say they're not companies in the traditional sense, in our American vernacular, is it more like the Army, the Navy, just like government organizations that operate like a business, but have very much the government's interest in mind?
I think it would be more like I think it would. I mean, they have ties into the military, but I think it would be more like the Federal Reserve or something, or like it's owned by they're chartered and they have a mission, or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Their mission is to perpetuate their monopoly. And remember, their mission is not, that's not the ends to that's a means to a bigger end. Their goal is not to have a monopoly in rare earths. That's just a means to an end. Remember, the next level of their goal are to have enormous amounts of economic growth from different industry, like the electric vehicle sector, which BYD is now the biggest electric car maker in the world. And we've been writing
Didn't take
about
long.
this. They're cutting deals all over Latin America. They'll be in Africa, and then their final goal is total domination. It's over the digital currencies. By that point, in their vision, we'll be, we'll still be up there. It's not like we'll be in caves, but
Apocalyptic control.
but we'll be. I mean, we won't have the number one currency anymore. If this goes according to their plan, our future generations won't have the same advantages that we had or our forefathers had. That's just the reality.
Which is really interesting to think about, because when you think about China's history, they also felt dwarfed in their opportunities and advantages, right? For eons, they didn't have the internet, right? Or where would they go learn things? And now that they have all that accessible to them, they are becoming the top, the lead, the experts in industries that we also consider ourselves the lead in or experts in. They're just as good, if not better. So it's almost interesting that like we would kind of revert down to a role of just not having access to opportunities. It's
Well,
hard to imagine a world like that.
Well, think about it. I mean, we're the ones that invented the rare earth process. We invented all this chemistry. Our corporate and political class, believed in short-term gains. That's how executives get paid. When there's short-term gains, the executives get bonuses, big bonuses in the largest corporations. And the ideology of just global trade was, hey, let's let whoever does it most efficiently and maybe less environmental rules and all that, and we'll have richer and better, and we'll all do better. And that was the premise. But what happens when we outlive our usefulness?
You're removed from the market.
Yeah. I mean, so we're a society. We're an incredible society. We have to fight for our society. And that means what we believe is going back to some basics, like learning how to set up supply chains and support them over here. At least certain critical ones, not everything.
Yeah, no, and not once would I ever hope to imply that we want your independence from everyone, right? The
No,
world is just too small, right? We all need each other, and
absolutely.
glo globalization, I think is great. We can build on our strengths and help one another out. It's just when it swings too far and is used against you is the
Well,
tough part.
Well, Dustin, real quickly, look, the hypothesis was when Nixon first went over to China and we brought them into the World Trade Organization. The assumption was they're going to learn, they're going to get rich like us, and they're going to change their system. They're going to embrace democracy. And then they're going to let us come in and buy up their assets in a free market. Well, that's not what happened. They did that. But when it came time to, American or European capital going into China and buying things up, it ain't going to happen. So they used the system, but they kept their hybrid, and they sort of changed to some extent. They have market structures there, but they kept a hybrid structure. And, we finally, woke up and said, hey, what happened? Well, open up and look, open your eyes. You'll see.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall. It's reading about China and what's happened in China in terms of business culture is truly eye-opening and vastly different than how the American business culture operates, which can be very difficult to mentally connect with, like how and why, and like it's just different for better or worse.
Yep. It's different.
So, um, all right, Daniel. Well, let's wrap up here. Is there any final thoughts? Anything that you want to conclude with here?
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of what we've done, our traffic, is exploding. A lot of people are discovering rareearthexchanges.com. We've set up a forum that's growing. We're really trying to inform and educate investors, like retail investors, about this space, this sector, how it works, so that as more and more investors seek to get involved, we want to be a positive influence. We want to bring more transparency and more impactful information more economically. And so I feel very good about what we're doing thanks to your fabulous web development skills, the content we're putting out. I think it's exciting. So people should check out the heavy rare earth element rankings, very important one. That's very critical for certain sectors, like certain products in the military. And we have more rankings coming.
Absolutely. And a nice shameless plug there. So thank you. As we sign off here, I would just say if you have found this episode helpful, give us a like. If you don't want to miss another episode, subscribe to the channel and you'll stay up to date with the latest news and the latest insights from the industry as we continue to interview CEOs and other industry experts in their space. Speaking of that, next week we are going to interview 3 different people here on the show. They're out of Pennsylvania, and we've got Paul, Sarma, and Kim, all from different organizations, all working on towards the same goal. They're all connected. They all work together on different areas. So come join us for that. We hope it's an interesting conversation for you to come listen to. So with that, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.